What's good, people? Uncle Hotep back at it again. How y'all doing? I was going to try to finish my podcast, and I was like, I had to listen to it where I stopped, and then I decided to web browse, lose my attention real quick like that. And I'll go to the collie, and besides them people on the forum negging me because they're a bunch of hipsters, I come across this story. Transgender Daycamp. What the fuck? They got it's out in California, and it's for kids like 4 to 12, and they come from all over the country. Louisiana. They came as far as Africa. People from the motherland going to transgender daycamp. What the fuck, man? I'll just read a sentence. At check-in each day, campers make a name tag with their pronoun of choice. Some opt for she or he, or a combination she, he, or they, or no pronoun at all. Some change their name or pronouns daily to see what feels right. You see how far we've fallen. God, Jesus Christ.
Why do you say we've fallen? We have a day camp where children are given the personal liberty to select a pronoun and not have it impact what activities they can do, not to mention they are also protected against people who not only hate them, but will take strides to make them feel worthless for being who they are, if they don't conform. What scares you about that so much that you feel the need to mock said perspective as a perceived threat? Is it the fact that these children are being offered liberty over their identity? The fact that you can't bully them whilst they're there? Or is it the fact that they may grow up to be well-adjusted adults who realise that a lack of such liberty and the presence of such bullying is not an intrinsic part of society, merely one you and Christianity has worked so hard at for so long to maintain? Even if you don't understand what being trans entails, why is freedom such a threat to you? How does it affect your life in the slightest if some parents want their children to grow up happy in who they are, rather than break down under social pressure? I mean, your viewers seem to think that these children are being pressured into being trans, but the very segment you just read out proved all of that to be entirely false. These children are being offered a free choice. And all we see here is you being a total arse over that fact. This may be something for us to keep in mind as the video progresses.
What I don't get is, you smart IQ folks out here, they were saying, even an article said, 10 years ago, this would never have happened. This day camp, this transgender day camp never would have happened. Well, can somebody give a scientific explanation why 10 years ago this would never have happened? Because 10 years ago it wouldn't have happened because you probably wouldn't have enough kids to fill the goddamn camp.
And your evidence for that assertion is what exactly? The reality, meanwhile, is that the explanation isn't a scientific one, but a historic one. That's to say that trans people aren't being born any more frequently, merely they can come out more often and less of them are being driven to suicide by people such as yourself as a result. In the 4th century CE, the Theodosian Code not only prohibited same-sex interaction, but being trans under the death penalty. This was during the Christianization of Rome and, with it, Europe as well as parts of Africa and the Middle East. Said teachings were then distributed even further by numerous conquests all over the globe and later on colonialism. Now, we must note that the early trans identities were often merged into homosexuality, along with most of what we'd call the LGBT+ community. This divergence is a newer phenomenon. Yet these were just the terms, the identities already existed, and we can still see some particulars when involving the trans umbrella. For example, we have the South American deity Tlazototl, who took pain and suffering and turned it into gold. This deity was not only worshipped by lesbian priests, but also women who'd been assigned male at birth, i.e. trans women. This was before the Spanish arrived and began to slaughter such people by burning them at the stake, tearing them apart by dogs, or other painful methods of execution. Then we have the Two Spirits of America, the Hydra of India, and the Mukanathan of the Middle East. Terms still in use today, yet each has a historic basis. Even the modern term Two-Spirit is a replacement for the ancient term Badachi, which European colonialists attempted to stamp out, just as they did with Hydra in India. Each of these groups have incredible cultural significance to their people, often being seen as some sort of gateway to the gods or connection to both male and female. But things go even further than that if we acknowledge how language surrounding the trans community has evolved, i.e. how transvestite was once used as a homogeneous category until more recently. This is important as Dr. David Greenberg, a lecturer at New York University, stated that the role of transvestite shamans was so widely dispersed geographically and historically that it likely dates back to, quote, the late Paleolithic, if not earlier. Said era ended around 10,000 years ago, but as noted, much of that was suppressed following the Theodosian Code and the spread of Christian infection to other parts of the globe. That was until the late 19th, early 20th century. It was around then that trans identities began to draw scientific interest, and at the forefront of all of that was the Institut for Sexualwissenschaft, aka the Institute of Sex Research in Germany. It made great bounds in exploring not just trans identities, but all variations under the LGBT+ spectrum. Sadly, it didn't last long as, when the Nazis rose to power, it was one of their first targets. If you have ever seen book burnings by the Nazis, you've seen their work being destroyed. Meanwhile, both the service users of the Institute and its staff were forced to either flee the country or they were shipped off to concentration camps, and they were marked by the Pink Triangle. After the war, the Allies had no desire to remember said pink triangles as they did the rest of the victims of the Holocaust. So for decades, the LGBT+ community, particularly the trans community, has been fighting to regain ground taken from them by the Nazis. So that's why this wouldn't have happened until recently. So trans identities are a species-wide phenomenon. They're thought to have been with us since the earliest civilizations and were forced into hiding by Christianity, including Nazi fascism, only to re-emerge when the environment was safer. The thing is, your argument could be applied to people of colour when it comes to them entering positions of power, so I'd really avoid this style of argument if I were you, as it has potential to come back round and haunt you.
You see what I'm saying? You know, they're trying to make it seem like, oh, we've come so far. No. something is happening. I don't know if it's in the water. Are they doing that frog experiment? They doing it with humans? You know what I mean? Is it television? Is it a combination of everything?
And the evidence you have to support any of these beyond your own ignorance is what exactly? Also, could you possibly explain how television or modern water systems could affect people back in the late Paleolithic era? Because until you can account for that, your tinfoil fear-mongering is just that, a cheap way to assert something to cast doubt, yet not supply actual evidence. If you don't know, why are you opening your mouth? Ignorance is not a positive in forming an argument.
You know, and I want to read this goddamn. Hold on. I want to read this one part because they're gonna. Wondering if your child is transgender, here are some tips. My son likes to wear dresses. Is this a phase or something more? My answer is we don't know. Diane Ursensoft. I know. She's a developmental clinical psychologist, director of mental health, University of California. What we know is you have a son who likes princess dresses. I would say get him the dresses. Have your child feel free to choose. Maybe they'll stop wearing dresses. Maybe they'll grow up to be gay. What the fuck? That's the answer somebody with like 5 million degrees gives you? Well, give them some dresses. You know? It's like my son keeps jerking off. Hey, give him some pornography. Like, what the fuck is this shit, man?
It's pretty disgusting how you revel in your own ignorance as if it were a good thing. From the advice you just gave, the doctor is doing their job rather well. A dress does not make a person a woman. It's just an item of clothing. A person's expression has no set correlation with a person's gender identity or sexuality. They could just be a boy who likes dresses, gay or straight. So that detail is irrelevant to the question as to whether said child is trans. You can't tell from that. The only thing that is truly relevant is how a person identifies and how they associate via the usage of pronouns. It's these things the specialists look out for. The identity and not the behaviours outside of purely cultural and entirely unscientific gender scripts. That's why what a child identifies as at this camp won't impact what sports they play, because these people actually understand the nuance. Also, why does masturbation scare you so much? That likely wasn't as effective as you thought.
Transgender children will be insistent, consistent, and persistent about their gender dysphoria, she says. It's not something the child says one time and it goes away. For critics who question whether preschool-age kids should be allowed to socially transition, Ehrenhoff says, we expect a 2-year-old to know I'm a boy, I'm a girl. So why can't that apply to transgender children?
It's a valid argument, so simply following it by an exclamation to downplay what the science has shown us does not act as an effective counter. All you are doing is showing us just how lacking you are in your apparent integrity. We get it. You don't have much knowledge about the topic. Sadly, you and your willfully ignorant subscribers seem to celebrate that fact. Hence, my response.
This is sick. This is child abuse. I'm not even going to front, man. This is child abuse. This is sickening. This is evil on its highest level, what they're doing to these kids out here. You know, if the child is confused, they'd be like, hey, you know, no, you're a girl, or no, you're a boy. You know what I'm saying? like at that age, they're still confused. I mean, you have to explain to them what that is. So what if some of these parents are not explaining to them what that is? They're just putting them in dresses anyway. Like, hey, we wear a dress.
You follow that segment with about 20 seconds of silence as if you'd made a hard-hitting point. You hadn't. The children are being offered a choice in how they identify. You read that very fact out at the start, followed by the specialist telling parents to give their child a choice in what they wear, whilst not drawing an intrinsic link between the former and the latter. Here's the facts, however. Half of young trans people have attempted suicide once in the past year due to increased depression and anxiety. Meanwhile, children who are supported in their identities showed no increase in either depression or anxiety when compared to a cisgender control, i.e. a non-trans control group of the same ages and backgrounds. And the link has been demonstrated to be more than simply correlative. It's causative in how LGBT+ individuals born into households hostile to who they are more likely to not only develop psychological problems, but are also more likely to take part in risky behaviour such as substance abuse and unprotected sex. Only a Christian would call protecting a child against all of that by giving them some liberty which has a demonstrable benefit a form of child abuse. Meanwhile, you follow a book that tells you to murder your child if they ever curse you. Your priorities are incredibly messed up.
If I'm a kid who occasionally wants to put on my mom's high-heel shoes or wear my mom's princess dress, I'm not the kid who wants to live as a girl. I'm the boy who occasionally wants to wear a girl's clothes, says Joanna Olsen Kennedy. The important thing is to ask whether your child is in distress. Are you having daily battles about clothing before school? There are some things that are pretty universal. Is this kid that everyone is trying to give to Mutant Ninja Turtles to, and what they really want is the gift their sisters are getting? I mean, that could be, they see their sisters are favored. You know what I mean? The mother hangs out with the sisters more. The father hangs out with the sisters more. They do more things with the sister. So, the son's going to be like, hey, man, maybe if I act like my sister, maybe I can get the attention that my sisters are getting. What the fuck, man?
What the fuck? Asked the guy whose analysis is bordering on pop cultural Freudian. Fact is, the specialists are equipped to discern between trans and non-trans children in how they present their identity. Even the way a child simply refers to themselves as being a certain gender versus wishing they were has a pretty decent accuracy. That's why a good number of children referred to gender clinics go no further. It's not because the specialists say they are trans and then the child turns around and decides they're wrong. It's because parents take them to said clinics over unrelated things such as dress, and the specialist tells them exactly what the doctor said earlier. The specialists are incredibly careful to avoid a misdiagnosis, and yet this camp has no impact on that really. It's just a safe place for children to explore their identity under whatever pronoun they like.
Away for the weekend. It can also help for parents to get away somewhere with their child and allow the child to call their shots in terms of their gender, such as letting them use a different pronoun over dress or clothing of their choice. Do it somewhere where you're not going to see people if that's an issue for you. Do you do a weekend as a different gender and see what you... People have said this over and over again. Oh my God, I saw a side of my child I'd never seen before. There are no set rules, however. Iron in the Hot Soft says some early signals can provide information about whether the child is transgender. They include certain actions at a very young age, such as toddlers pulling barrettes from their hair, grabbing for their sister's dress and dolls, or throwing away their trucks. The use of verbs regarding gender, instead of "I wish I was a girl," the transgender child say, "I am a girl." Yo, this is straight up brainwashing, man. They're really brainwashing these kids. They really, really are.
Actually, it's called science. That last line pretty much came from the journal I referenced in the previous segment on page 6. Although both persisters and desisters reported cross-gender identification, their underlying motives appeared to be different. The persisters explicitly indicated that they felt they were the other sex. The desisters indicated that they identified as a girlish boy or a boyish girl who only wished they were the other sex. Now, you can call allowing children to identify as they choose until they can figure out whether or not a child is trans or not abuse, but the facts are facts regardless of whether you like them or not. So either put forward an actual counter-argument or live with being called out for being such a bloated hypocrite.
Frustration over their genitals. By around age 3, children understand penis equals boy and vagina equals girl. What the fuck, man? Often these are kids who cry out, "Why did God get it wrong? Mommy, can you put me back inside so I can come out like my sister?" That is brainwashing, man. What they're doing, they're not loving the gender that boy, like they're using the example she's using, they're not loving that kid. Not at all. Man, this is I'm not going to read the rest of this shit, man. But this is what's going on in America. Transgender day camps. We should be halfway to Mars by now. No, we want to have transgender day camps. Includes 4-year-olds. Like, how are you 4 years old? You like, hey, I don't want to be a girl or a boy anymore.
Well, how does a cis 4-year-old choose to want to be a boy or a girl? You can't assume one and then decry the other as being impossible. They either can understand or they can't. As for the crack about Mars, we would have been there a long time ago if it weren't for the church messing things up for science throughout history. Not to mention, the science is not on your side in this debate. That's why I reference journal articles and you parade your ignorance as if it means something.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember when I child, we had to, like, we kept asking, like, you know, we tell her, like, "Jade, what are you?" I'm a girl, I'm a girl. You know what I mean? You have to drill in their head what they are. You know what I mean? These parents are just letting the kids make up the shit. And then they just run with it. I think some of these parents want their special snowflake child so they can feel, I don't know, so they can feel special, I guess. I don't know. You know, I think sometimes it might be too much pressure to try to raise a good child or a successful child, and they'd rather go the route of having a special child because they still get the attention anyway. I don't know. I'm just spitting anything. I don't know. I'm a black man from Exeter, Pennsylvania. I don't know. But this stuff, I'm just read the comments. There's only 2 comments so far. William Campbell says perverts like these should be in prison, never allowed contact with children. Grant McIver, give me a freaking break. Kids don't know shit about genders. I agree with William Campbell. These adults need to be in jail. I can't. They said it was a slippery slope, and that slope is slippery as hell, boy.
What a thoroughly repulsive human being. You're right, you don't know. You don't know what being trans is. You don't know what's moral. You don't know what's the only ethical move in that situation. You don't know what child abuse is. And you certainly don't know what being a bad parent looks like, as if you did, you'd never be able to have a mirror in your house. If you seriously need to know what's between a child's legs and you're not their doctor, you have no business being left alone around children. There are a few things which I'd just like to add here at the end of this video. The first is a massive thank you to everyone who has ever donated to me via Patreon. Your fantastic support has given me the ability to keep this channel going, and I hope to continue producing content in the years to come. Secondly, I would like to thank anyone who has ever interacted with this channel. Your shares, likes and dislikes, as well as your comments of both approval and disapproval, have ensured constant feedback, allowing me to improve my work. Last of all, I would like to express my desire that you treat any of the people displayed throughout the video with respect. Whilst it is true that ideas do not demand respect, and there are many in fact which deserve reprehension, we must be careful on how we tackle said ideas in ensuring we are not simply targeting the person. In short, be the compassionate side of reason. So take care, and I'll see you next time.